What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to Sidelined NFL Week 12 in the books. Remember to like, subscribe, and leave a comment to Wilco Media. Let's get into it. My three biggest takeaways from this week of games. My number one takeaway. Thanksgiving was great. It was a great Thanksgiving for football, which is surprising because a lot of years you have a lot of duds. There are three games. You get the Lions, late afternoon you get the Cowboys, then you get the Thursday night game, and usually you maybe go 1 for 3. Usually a Lions game is a blowout. Dallas game is 50-50, and then the late game's usually pretty good. You went 3 for 3 this year. The Buffalo-Detroit game was awesome. The Dallas game was competitive at the end, and the late game might have been the best one, Patriots-Vikings. It was just nice to have a good Thanksgiving, good slate of games. It was nice to see. You were gripped all day on the TV, watching, seeing what was going on. It was great. It was a great day to be a football fan. All right. My second takeaway this week is the league is wide open this year. Wide open. Wide open this year. Anyone can win it this year. It's fun to see because usually, the league can tend to be top-heavy at times. Kansas City, Buffalo, which is what I thought for a long time. But Buffalo has not looked like themselves from where they started the season to now. Josh Allen's playing with the elbow. I don't know what it is. I also think the Bills are just, kind of have that choking Buffalo factor. They just can't seem to win it for whatever reason. I think every team is pretty, even like the good teams, the Eagles, the Cowboys, the Bucs, the Bengals, they all lose games or have moments where they don't look elite. And I really think anyone can win it. I think Kansas City is a cut above the rest, but they can have a bad day too. They just played the Rams and didn't look too hot. I mean, if Cincinnati knocked them off or Buffalo, I don't think anyone would be shocked. The league's wide open this year, a lot of parity, and I think it's great to see. My third takeaway is the Jets should move on from Zach Wilson. Now, I talked about this last week, how bad he was and how they should bench him, and this week proved to me that he is the problem. I know they beat a depleted Chicago team who's really bad. Mike White looked good, though, and what was most telling to me was not that he looked good because he's looking in the past and they beat the Bears, but how happy the receivers looked. Elijah Moore has been pouting all year. Garrett Wilson, after the Patriots game, was pissed. He was talking to reporters. He wasn't happy. They were dancing. They were celebrating. They both had really good games. You could tell how happy the team was to get behind the quarterback they actually like and, can get behind. And that just proves to me Zach Wilson has lost the locker room. He's lost the organization. Not only does he suck, his teammates don't like him. And for a quarterback, that's a big problem because the quarterback has to be a leader of men, which Zach Wilson isn't. I think they should bench him the rest of the year, inactive, ride Mike White, see, if you got anything there, and if not, draft a quarterback the next year and try and sign somebody in free agency. All right, so we got from my takeaways. Now let's get into top 5 games of NFL Week 12. And for this segment, we bring in the people's champ, Sam. Sam, how you doing today?
Good, Matt. Thanks for having me
nice.
again.
Classy handshake. Can I say, Sam, you look phenomenal. I thought I looked, I feel ashamed. I feel underdressed talking to you here.
Oh, come on, Matt. You look great as well.
Sam, listen, if I was batting for the other team, we might have to take an intermission.
Take a step back, all right, buddy? All right. Come on.
No, you look great, though. You look sharp.
Thank you.
Just like Kirk Cousins looks sharp, Sam. Let's get into these games here. First game, we have Cowboys-Giants. Dallas handled business. They beat the Giants steadily. The Giants came back at the end to make a little bit of a closer game. But penalties plagued the Cowboys like they did last season. Sam, any big takeaways from this game?
Yeah, I got a couple, Matt.
Okay.
So the Giants had a 13-7 lead going into the half. So it looked like the Giants were definitely playing some good football. They also had a touchdown called back early on because there's an ineligible man downfield, which negated the touchdown. I believe it was the Darius Slayton.
Okay.
In the beginning.
Good player.
But then the Cowboys came back strong in the third and early in the fourth quarter, scoring 21 unanswered points,
21.
Which ended up being the difference in this game. I also got to say the CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott combination is very lethal.
Yep.
I'll pull up a couple of stats here. So since Dak has returned, CeeDee Lamb is averaging over 6 catches on 9 targets with 90 receiving yards and a touchdown per game.
He has been playing a lot better lately, CD.
I mean, it must be the Dak effect.
Are you a believer in the Cowboys going forward? Do you think they're a serious Super Bowl threat?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, the numbers don't lie, Matt. Over the last 5 games since he's returned, the team is 4-1. The offense is averaging just under 34 points, and the defense is holding teams to under 18 points. I think that's a recipe for winning football games.
See, Sam, I agree. They're fucking loaded. They have so much talent. I just think they're fucking stupid. They make so many fucking penalties. I mean, last year you saw it in the San Francisco game when they lost at home. I think Mike McCarthy is a blubbering idiot. Frankly, I think he's extremely overrated. I think he walked into that Super Bowl with Green Bay. That team was loaded. And I like Dak, but I feel like he... he's a tendency to not always show up in the biggest spots. I mean, I think they're a threat, but I don't think I'd pick them.
Well, here's the thing, too, is what I noticed from this game is that they utilize Ezekiel Elliott a lot more than Tony Pollard.
He's got a thick beard.
Which, after the last 2 games and what Pollard was able to do with the more touches and more experience on the field, he was able to garner a lot more yardage. He was very efficient and helped the offense put up big numbers. But this game, it seemed like they were feeding Zeke a lot more. Like, Zeke was more involved. He was the one that was scoring the touchdowns this week. And it's just a lot of questions regarding that Cowboys backfield, because if you have a guy that's proven himself when he hasn't had much to show up until the last couple weeks when Zeke went down with injury, like, why aren't you using him? Why aren't you staying on that hot hand? You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like the hot streak. Go until it gets cold. You know what I mean?
I mean, I think the backfield, they might have the best 1-2 punch in the entire league. But I agree. I think they should utilize Tony Pollard more.
Yeah.
But, penalties, can they clean up at the end of the year? I guess. Do I think they will? No, because I think they're fucking stupid.
Yeah.
And they're chokers. All right. Next game. All right, Sam. Next game, Patriots-Vikings. Vikings winning a shootout. It was a really good game, actually. Mac Jones probably had his best game of the season. He looked sharp for once. The Patriots offense looked sharp. There was a very bad call that hurt the Patriots. It was a Hunter Henry touchdown. It got called back, so they ended up losing 4 points in that situation. Then when they went down the field at the end of the game, they needed a touchdown, not a field goal. Didn't get it. Ended up losing. Do you think it was a bad call? And what were your overall takeaways from this game?
Yeah, so starting with that call at the end. So it was a passing play. It was Mac Jones. He dropped back, ended up finding Hunter Henry, which looked to be the go-ahead touchdown at the time. And it was a touchdown, in my opinion, because, he broke the plane. He reached for it, obviously. He had control of the ball. It was not only until he went down to the ground, which he did have his hands underneath the ball, which, in my opinion, is a catch. It was only when he turned over, which is after the fact, that he managed to maybe make the ball move a little bit, but it was not because of the ground. I think it was because of the other defender that was on him that caused the movement of the ball. Because we've had a lot of calls like in recent time, like for instance, the Travis Kelce touchdown that was called earlier this year against the Colts, because he lunged for the goal line and like the ball came out and they called it a touchdown. But if they're going to make the case for that, then why isn't this a touchdown? You know what I mean?
I think it was bullshit. I think anyone watching a game, if you're just a football fan, you just look, that's a touchdown. He crossed the goal line. And it ended up it sucks because that call ended up directly affecting the game. Because at the end of the game, they only would have needed a field goal. Maybe you go to overtime, you win the coin toss, you go down. You know what I mean? Who knows what happens? So I do think they got screwed. However, Kirk Cousins looked really good. We've seen that. We've bought into that before. Jeff looked great. I want to ask you more about Mac Jones, though, because Mac had his best game of the year. Does this show you anything about Mac? Like, does this prove anything to you, or is this just kind of like whatever?
I think it does.
Okay.
At Alabama, he definitely showed us that he has a lot of potential, especially with the weapons that he had there, and obviously the right coaching staff, because being under Nick Saban, very similar to Belichick in terms of their ability to call plays.
Yeah.
I would say that Mac Jones looked great out there. He threw for the most passing yards he has all season. He threw for 382 yards, 2 touchdowns, 0 picks on 28 of 39 passing. I would say that's very efficient.
Yeah, definitely.
Plus, with the weapons that he has Jacoby Myers, Devontae Parker, Hunter Henry. He's throwing to guys that are probably like a wide receiver 2 at best,
He doesn't
maybe
have any
3.
stars.
He doesn't really have that guy like Kirk Cousins has Justin Jefferson and Thielen, 2 reliable guys that he can throw the ball to, especially Jefferson. Jefferson can catch anything.
Yeah, he's top 3. I mean, to be honest, Mac Jones is about as vanilla and ordinary. I mean, Mac Jones is Ritz crackers. You bite it, it really has whatever. You know what I mean? It really does nothing for you. You know, it's not bad. You'll eat them. You know, but it's like, you know, whatever. Very ordinary, very basic. You know, it's like he's like a 5. You know what I mean?
I mean,
like your doer.
I'd have to disagree. I think it's the coaching. I think the coaching was holding him back a little bit, not really giving him an opportunity to really unleash his potential.
I think the coaching definitely does not help and has hurt him. But I don't know how much potential he has, you know?
You just got to let the kid sling it because, I mean, this is what's shown. It was actually a shootout. It was very entertaining, and they should have won this game. If it wasn't for this play at the end. So the Patriots were set to get the ball back late in the game.
Punt.
And the punt block team goes out there, and they try to block the punt, right, as they're supposed to.
Yep.
They ended up roughing the kicker on the punt, which set up a first down and negated the Patriots from getting the ball back and ultimately cost them the game at the end.
No bueno. It's funny because Belichick, you always think Bill Belichick coach teams, their special teams are always so strong. The past 2 years, I feel like since Brady left, their special teams have blown. They've been terrible. A lot of penalties.
Yeah, not a lot of discipline in this unit.
Their special teams got bukkakied on Thanksgiving. I mean, it really did. Between the kickoff return, between that, they looked bad, Sam. They looked bad.
And one last thing about this game as well. I mean, we said it over and over again, but Justin Jefferson just picked right back up where he left off. Obviously, you're going to have 1 or 2 games in a long season, 17-game season, that are going to be a dud, which the dud was last week against the Cowboys when the whole offense didn't show up, so you got to give him a little bit of credit. But he came back, strong showing. He had 9 catches for 139 yards with a touchdown, and he also was 1-for-1 passing with an 11-yard pass, which was actually pretty cool. I like that play.
There you go. All right, next game, Baltimore-Jacksonville. You actually texted me about this game as it was happening. I went home after watching this with you at RJ's for a little bit. This game was crazy. The Ravens blew another close game. Seems to be a trend in their season. But my biggest takeaway is Trevor Lawrence. This was the best moment of his NFL career. I think this was his best game. He led a comeback right down the field, went right through the Ravens defense, sliced right through him like Swiss cheese, Sam. They got the 2-point conversion. He looked great. I think it was a defining moment for Trevor Lawrence, and I think he's having a pretty solid year, all things considered. What do you think?
Yeah, so I'll start by talking about Trevor Lawrence just because he looked awesome in this game, like you said. He threw for 321 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. He did have a fumble, which wasn't his fault because he did not see that guy coming and he got absolutely popped. But over his last 3 games, he is averaging 36 pass attempts, completing about 28 of them, 272 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks, while being sacked 3 times a game. So he's definitely shown why he was one of the top draft choices in terms of the quarterbacks in that draft class. I like this Jaguars team. However, Travis Etienne did go down in this game, which is bad news for his fantasy owners. But I think they're in good hands, though, because I think Hasty and Darrell Henderson, the newly acquired.
They signed Darrell Henderson?
Yeah, they signed him. I think they're definitely going to shine a little bit because there's a lot of volume to be taken in this backfield. Right. But as far as the Ravens go, this was not one that they shouldn't have, given up. I got to say, this is their 4th game that they dropped in a row where they've had a big lead or a relatively big lead late, and they just can't seem to finish the game. Like, they have their foot on the pedal, and then they slowly start to take it off, let the other team come back. The offense starts to stall. Like, for instance, Mark Andrews was non-existent in this game after the first drive.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know. I just feel like this Ravens team is very mid-Sam. They're like with all the other, like, decent teams. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like they can be beat by anyone any given Sunday. I love Lamar Jackson. I don't know. I just don't feel like their style lends to being a true Super Bowl threat. Harbaugh, I can't stand ever since the whole Patriot fiasco. Ravens, whatever. But Jacksonville, I would like to see Trevor Lawrence progress because he was such a stud coming out of college. He had a really shaky rookie year with Urban Meyer.
Yes.
But I feel like all the players love Doug Peterson, and I think if they stick with that combination, maybe the defense gets a little better. He could make some noise coming up.
He was a great coach in Philly, and I like the call to go for 2 at the end instead of just trying to, go for overtime there or, have faith in the defense. I think he had a lot of faith in the offense, and they definitely showed out for him.
It was a great game. All right, cool. Next game, we got Browns-Bucs. Now, this game really pissed me off as a lifelong, Tom Brady supporter and Dick Ryder. The Bucs were up 17-10. They blew it. David Njoku made an unbelievable one-handed, maybe one of the best catches of this NFL season. Bucs choked a lead, went to overtime. They lost. Ugly loss for Tampa again. The Browns, whatever, their season's probably over with, how many games they've lost before Watson comes back. But, Sam, the Buccaneers, it looked like they were turning a corner. Is this a step back, Sam? Are you giving up on the Bucs? What do you think about the Bucs?
Well, here's the thing, Matt. After dropping this game to Cleveland, which they should have won in hindsight, it was because the offense just stalled. Cleveland's defense picked it up there. Brady wasn't able to pass efficiently down the stretch. Cleveland really zoned in on the run game as well because they were getting killed earlier in the game. That's why Tampa was able to, move the ball well because they were able to get the run game established. But I would say after dropping to 5-7, they're still atop of their division in the South, believe it or not. It's because the Falcons lost their game against the Commanders. So, there's still hope as a Buccaneers fan that they could make some noise, especially come playoff time. But if they keep dropping games like this one that they should have put away, it doesn't look good.
Well, Sam, I think they'll win the division because they're playing the worst one in the league. And if, let's say, they're a 4 seed in the NFC, they're going to, in all likelihood, play the Cowboys, but they'll be at home. Would it shock anyone if the Tom Brady, beat the Cowboys and the Cowboys choked? No. That's why I'm saying, this was a horrendous loss. And do I think the Buccaneers will win the Super Bowl? No, I wouldn't pick them. But would it shock anyone if they got hot at the end of the year, they win a playoff game, upset Dallas, and they get rolling, they upset some teams? No, because we've seen that story from Tom Brady so many fucking times, and they have the talent.
Yeah, I just got to say 2 more things before we move on. So I want to give a shout-out to Chris Godwin. He put up a very valiant effort. He finished the game with 12 catches, 110 yards, and 1 touchdown. He seems to be the go-to guy that Tom throws to when he needs him the most. He's the safety blanket.
Yeah, you need to move the sticks.
He's like the Julian Edelman of Tampa Bay right now. And then also, I want to give a shout-out to Carlton Davis, the guy that fell down trying to guard Amari Cooper.
He blew it.
You let your team down, man, I understand. But, in this moment, you cannot afford to fall down, especially when Brissett is looking for Amari Cooper on that situation, and you give up arguably the play that sets up the game-winning touchdown.
He's a good player, but literally that was the play that changed the game. After that, that was the reason they lost in overtime.
Yeah.
Bad mistake. All right, last game here. We have the Cincinnati Bengals beating the Tennessee Titans 20-16. It was a gritty AFC matchup, Sam. 2 playoff teams. They met in the playoffs last year. Tennessee, they're tough. They're gritty. I just don't think they have enough on offense to be considered a true threat. Cincinnati, though, they're getting Jamar Chase back this week. They should be getting Joe Mixon back. Sam, are the Bengals a Super Bowl contender in your eyes?
Absolutely, Matt. This game really proved that they are a Super Bowl contender and right where they are last year, I would say, in my opinion, because the defense was able to hold the league's best running back to only 38 rushing yards this game.
That's pretty good.
Besides the one play where he caught a pass a little bit past the line of scrimmage and took it 69 yards, which was pretty impressive, I'd say, because it's always fun watching the big guy run down the field.
Man, 69 yards.
But no, the Bengals did their due diligence. They did their homework. They kept this Titans offense in check, kept Derrick Henry in check, and that's why they won this game ultimately. I'm also a big fan of T. Higgins. I think he can be a clear-cut number 1 wide receiver in the league. It is a shame that he is playing with Jamar Chase because he would see a lot more volume if he were elsewhere. But I could see this paying dividends, especially with their matchup next week against KC.
Yeah. No, I agree. Cincinnati's fucking loaded, dude. Their offense, they have 3 guys who have got 1,000 yards before. I think Joe Burrow's a top 5 quarterback in the league. Joe Mixon's a really good running back. I think that their defense, is actually underrated. I think Cincinnati can hang with anyone. They can score with anyone, the Buffalo to Kansas City's. And I think they can. They're right there with all those teams, man. I think they can knock off anyone if they get hot and get going.
I also got to say, Ryan Tannehill needs to go. I mean,
You don't like Tannehill?
they had 10 drives this game. I researched this.
Okay.
4 of them resulted in something positive, a.k.a. 3 field goals and a
40%.
touchdown.
That's an F, 40%.
So, I mean, he's 40%.
That's an F.
That's
failing.
not good.
You
I mean,
fail algebra.
obviously, you're not going to score on every possession, but at
take it
least
again.
you got to have something positive. You got to be able to move the ball.
Yeah.
Literally, half of those drives that he did not have something positive, literally, he did not at least get a first down.
He was a negative on the field, but his wife is a smoke, so at least he's winning on the field, off the field, right?
You win some, you lose some, right?
Yeah, I would take that. All right, that's it for the games. And next, we have a new segment on the show. Very excited to announce this segment. We're going to swing it over to Sam. This is Sam Reed's gambling segment. Sam's best bet. Sam, take it away.
Thank you, Matt. Guys, it's a pleasure to be here. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Sam Reed. I'm Matt's guest on this show from week to week. So this is a new segment that I thought we should get into. So it's going to be called Best Bets. So what this is I look ahead to next week's NFL slate. I pick out 3 bets that I think had the most value. I do have to apologize, though, because these lines will alter from week to week and as the week advances. So I do the research on Saturday, so this is what the odds were at the time that I researched them. And I also want to make a disclaimer before we get into it that, I am in no means a professional handicapper, so please be responsible when it comes to betting and only bet what you can afford to lose. All right, without further ado, let's get into it. Let's start with my first best bet of Week 13. So my first best bet of Week 13 is going to be in the Thursday Night Football slate, Patriots-Bills. I'm taking the under 45-point total for this game. The reason why I like this line is because it's a divisional matchup. I think these two defenses are arguably top 7 defenses, respectively. They did give up a bunch of points to a couple mediocre offenses recently with Buffalo playing Detroit and the Patriots playing the Vikings. They kind of, points were inflated a little bit just because of some calls and whatnot. So it wasn't their best look, but I think divisional games tend to go under, and I actually do have a stat for you. So as of Week 11, which was the previous week, primetime games have been hitting at a 55.9%, which is 19, 14, and 1 so far this season. So what that tells you is that the under seems to be the go-to when the spotlight is on. I will also say that these games, like these divisional matchups, are very gritty. So I would say that the Patriots and Bills are going to be a very run-heavy game script, especially if it's cold and windy, which I predict it to be on Thursday night in Foxborough. So I don't see a lot of points being scored. All right, let's get into the next one. This is my second best bet for Week 13. I like the Jaguars here. They got a great slate against the Detroit Lions. They're a slight favorite here on the money line. I really like how Trevor Lawrence is performing. As I mentioned earlier in the show, he's been a stud the last 3 weeks. He's showing everybody why the Jaguars took him at number 1 overall. He's got the weapons. He's got Christian Kirk. He's got Zay Jones, Marvin Jones Jr. He's got a good supporting cast. It's just a matter of if his O-line can protect him, because when he's under a lot of pressure, it's very hard. He tends to go down. As recently, they're averaging around 3 to 4 sacks a game against him. So that's the only concern. But I feel like this Detroit defense isn't anything special. I did some research. They are ranked 28th in terms of pass defense, which is awful. That is the 4th lowest in the league. I would also have to say that the Detroit Lions also give up the 2nd most points as of Week 11. They are only trailing the Cardinals for the most points given up. So there's a lot of points to be taken here. I don't see why Detroit should be favorited in this game. It should definitely be Jacksonville. I wouldn't be surprised if this line goes in favor of Jacksonville and more people start to put money on Detroit. But don't you worry, Jacksonville is the right pick here. Now let's get into the third and final best bet of Week 13. I like the Cincinnati Bengals. I think this is a great spot for them at home against Kansas City. They're coming off a great win against a good Titans team led by Derrick Henry, and they were able to contain him They held him to 38 rushing yards, which is an incredible feat to do. It is very hard to stop him. I would say this offense seems to be clicking right now. The defense is also clicking. They should be getting back Jamar Chase and Joe Mixon as well. So this team is definitely getting hot at the right time because it's late in the season, and teams that get hot late in the season tend to carry it on. So I feel like, especially if they are the underdog at home when favored by 3.5 points or more, I feel like this is definitely the play to go because there's a lot more value taking the money line rather than the points. Because, for instance, the plus 122 would be, if you put $10 on this bet, it would pay $12.20. There's a lot more value compared to the minus 110, which would be $11 you put in, you'd win 10. So there's a lot more value. It's definitely the best play of the three, but I am very, very confident in this bet. I just want to say thank you for tuning in to this new segment. I hope you guys enjoy. Now I'm going to turn it over to Matt. He's going to do sweet and sour, and then we will do this again next week. So with that, let's turn it over to Matt.
Wow, what a wonderful segment from Sam. Sam, that was delightful. It was a sharp segment from a sharp-looking guy. Thank you. All right, that was lovely. All right, next we got Sweet and Sour on the program. Fantasy football, 3 sweet, 3 sour from this week's of games. You know the drill. You've been watching long enough. Let's get into it. Number 3 sweet, we got Amon-Ra St. Brown. This guy's a stud on the Lions. Second-year sophomore receiver. He's the clear-cut number 1 on the Lions. He had a really hot start to the season, and he got hurt. And then he was like a little shaky. The last 3 weeks, he's put up big numbers. The offense is getting rolling again. He's clearly the guy. I like him, especially when they play at home on turf. He looks a little faster. He's really sweet. I'd put him in the lineup every week. He's clearly Goff's favorite target. Number 3 sour is Tyler Boyd. I love Tyler Boyd. He's a really good player. Unfortunately, he's the number 3 option on the Bengals behind Chase and Higgins. And I picked him up in all my leagues because I thought, all right, with Chase out, he's going to eat. He's going to be a top guy. He's going to get a lot of targets, a lot of receptions, even if he doesn't put up a ton of yards or touchdowns, neither of which happened. He actually has been doing worse than when Chase has been in the past 2 weeks. And he got dinged up on Sunday. Chase is coming back next week against Kansas City. I wouldn't play Boyd from here on out unless emergency situation because Chase is coming back. Now, it wouldn't shock me if he, every once in a while, he has a breakout game, he catches a big pass because Burrow's so good, they're going to air it out. But he won't be consistent. I would not play Boyd going forward. Number 2 sweet this week is T. Higgins, his teammate on the Bengals. T. Higgins is a fucking animal. This guy eats. He gets receptions. He gets targets. He gets yards. He gets touchdowns. He really does it all. And he's been eating without Chase out because he's been the number 1 option. Even with Chase coming back, they pass enough. They're good enough as an offense for T. Higgins to have standalone value, even with Chase. And he's certainly a touchdown guy. I mean, he's a big body. Burrow throws it up to him, lets him go get it. And he might draw less coverage with Chase coming back. T. Higgins, I think you can play him and feel good about it going forward. Number 2 sour is Gerald Everett. I like Gerald Everett. He's a pretty solid player, nothing crazy. He's a big body, but a lot of people thought he was going to do really well without Keenan Allen there, without Mike Williams there. And he was just kind of ordinary. He didn't light the world on fire. He wasn't terrible. He was just kind of mid. And now Keenan Allen's back. He's doing really well. Mike Williams sat out last week, but it sounds like he might be back again. He did another okay week. He only had 18 receiving yards, even though Herbert's looked a little better past couple of weeks. Tight ends are so weird. If you got to play him, you got to play him. But if you have any other options, I would try and play them over Gerald Everett going forward. He just hasn't produced enough. Number 1 sweet this week is Rachaad White of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. In a PPR scoring league, I think he had 19.9 fantasy points. He had 9 or 10 receptions. Only 64 yards rushing, but a ton of receptions because Brady, the offensive line in Tampa Bay, is bad. Brady's got to check the ball down quick. Thereby, Rachaad White gets a lot of receptions. If Fournette doesn't play, Rachaad White is a must start, especially in PPR formats. And even if Fournette does play going forward, Rachaad White's going to have standalone value. He's played well enough to carve out his own workload in the Tampa Bay backfield. He's definitely the third down back. and he's definitely going to get a lot of targets and receptions. They'll probably utilize him more in the running game as well. Definitely, you have to play him if Fournette doesn't play, and even if Fournette does play, he still has some standalone value. You got to keep Ricard White on your team. He's sweet this week and going forward. All right, number one sour this week is Deebo Samuel. Now, this one's a little weird because Deebo Samuel was drafted so high, and you still could play him. Like, he's fine. Like, he'll go off one week, but then the next week he won't do much. And it's because the 49ers are so loaded and have so many weapons. They got Kittle, they got Deebo, they got Ayuk, McCaffrey, Elijah Mitchell. You just don't know who's going to go off for the Niners each week. And it could be a little bit here. Like last week, none of them really went off. They all did, like, okay. And then some weeks you'll have Kittle will have 2 touchdowns, but then McCaffrey won't do anything. It changes. There's no consistency with the Niners in terms of their weapons, and that hurts Deebo Samuel because last year he went off, one of the best fantasy players last year. He was drafted as a wide receiver 1 in a lot of leagues, and he just hasn't been that this year. He's been too inconsistent, and last week he really didn't do much. If you gotta start him going forward, you got to start him. If you drafted him that high, you probably rely on him. But, I mean, if your team's good enough, you can bench him too, and I would not trust him going forward the rest of the season just because he's not consistent. And, you need consistency going forward for the fantasy playoffs. That's all we got this week for Sideline. It was great to have Sam in studio, his own segment. That was great. I think we all loved it. Remember to like, subscribe, and leave a comment before you check us out tonight, 8 o'clock Mondays. We also have Movie Mob dropping every Friday, 6 p.m., Go watch it.